What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, thanks to the wiki team over at Yolopark, we're going to be checking out their Transformers Generation 1 STARSCREAM AMK Pro Series model kit. Now, if you'd like this or any of their previous characters, then be sure to check out the links down below. Now, STARSCREAM is the third entry into this G1 lineup, which is a much more premium take on their regular model kits. These bad boys are not only packing die-cast, but a great amount of paint and also some inbuilt LEDs. But with that said, the build process is still pretty much the same. Despite being officially titled as a model kit, these guys are really more action figures than anything, so assembling STARSCREAM is incredibly straightforward. Now let's rebuild the pesky second in command and see how he does stack up against Megatron. Soaring through the battlefield, now we have STARSCREAM fully assembled into his robot mode, and he looks incredible. The design is so slavishly accurate to the original G1 cartoon that he looks near perfect stacked up against his on-screen counterpart. Now, I know there'll be some that will be instantly put off by the fact that this guy does not transform, but for the price point, this has to be easily one of the best looking G1 STARSCREAMs ever made, and honestly, if you can live without this guy's jet mode, then I think he is an easy stand-in for the close to $300 masterpiece. Their head sculpt is looking immaculate, and proportionally I think is spot on to the show. The rest of his robot mode is also incredibly well detailed, especially when it comes down to his wings. Not only are these sporting the classic upside down Decepticon insignias, but are also packing some wicked weathering, which really helps to show off the inbuilt panel lines. Even the cockpit is looking awesome, and despite not being a detail that cropped up too often in the show, I also really love the integration of the pilot seat that can be seen beneath this guy's windshield, just to create for a slightly more detailed, realistic look, which, speaking of, the wear and tear is tidy, particularly when it comes down to the corners. Despite this guy still packing a fair amount of die-cast, most of this is plastic, and it really gives you the impression that at some point this guy has taken one hell of a beating from Megatron. Even the back profile is looking sharp, and due to this guy not needing to transform, there is nothing on this design that shouldn't be there. Yet again, perfectly sculpted and painted, even down to the hidden away hydraulics packed inside this guy's spinal column. I also think the build quality of this one may just be the best out of the bunch. He is solid, there is nothing that is going to go flying off him anytime soon, and due to the extra added die-cast parts, he's also incredibly well grounded. So yet again, Yolopark have absolutely delivered on what is to be expected from a non-transforming Transformer. This figure is quality. For years we were used to putting up with those subpar Transformers Red figures by Hasbro, which were barely passable as action figures, but now we have these near perfect, almost high-end recreations of some of the best designs to come from that original cartoon series, and surprisingly still fairly affordable at the price point of around $50 US. This guy is also packing a decent amount of accessories. So, to begin with, we do see the return of his iconic G1 null rays, which in addition to being used in order to blast the crap out of the Autobots, can also magnetically activate the inbuilt LEDs. Now, much like the two previous G1 characters, this guy has three different modes. The first is the standard light up feature, the second is STARSCREAM glitching out, and then the third and final one is where the eyes slowly begin to pulsate on and off, I guess just seconds before Galvatron swoops in order to obliterate this guy into a pile of dust. The next two accessories are a pair of pretty mighty blast effects. Now, these are specifically designed in order to attach into the base of STARSCREAM's foot, I guess to give him some much needed boost whilst flying through the air, or you can also break these bad boys apart in order to fully weaponize up his null rays. The next set of accessories are if STARSCREAM wants to whack out a classic sneak attack, because hidden beneath the chest unit are a pair of missile pods, which to be fair, again, I thought were looking epic. These bad boys very nicely clasp over the top, so yet again you can have this Seeker absolutely raining hell down upon his opponents. Considering that Starscream was easily one of the most charismatic Decepticons to come from the show, it is pretty wicked to see him packing a total of 3 interchangeable faceplates. So to begin with, here we have Starscream sporting a slightly more standard look. Next up, we have a classic look for the character, that being Starscream's iconic smirk. Now this is slightly more subtle than personally I would like, but still a pretty wicked inclusion, especially when paired alongside Megatron. You could totally have Starscream give Megatron a good old kick in just after he has been defeated by Optimus Prime. The third, final, and possibly best sculpt out of the bunch would be Starscream packing the iconic maniacal smile. Now I think this looks epic and just exudes so much personality. This really does capture how menacing this guy was on the show. Yet again, I can imagine Megatron being on the brink of death and Starscream just laughing over his crippled body. Then finally, we do see the return of the iconic AMK Pro display base. Now whilst usually I do find these to be pretty nifty, in the case of Starscream I do wish that maybe they could have completely redesigned this, because it doesn't look too elegant, especially when you do want to pose Starscream into some of those in-flight poses, but I guess that it is pretty cool how much like the previous two, you can combine this alongside both Optimus Prime and Megatron's to try and recreate an actual diorama, which to be fair guys, does look kinda sick. Flying through Starscream's posability, the absolute bread and butter when it does come down to a non-transforming Transformer. To begin with, the wings have no issues in being brought backwards to create for a slightly more dynamic look. When it does come down here to the head, this is packing a ball joint, so you can definitely get super expressive with this, although to be fair guys, I thought that it was sick how he is packing an additional neck hinge, so that you are able to recreate some of those pretty wicked in-flight poses. The shoulders have no issues in kicking forwards, in kicking backwards, in going out to the side. He is also stacked when it does come down here to the inbuilt butterfly articulation. That is pretty sick. As we check out the bicep, this can spin here all the way around, and the elbows can bend way past 90 due to this supreme double bend. The wrists are packing a really decent ball joint, and much like some of the previous AMK Pro products, the index finger and the thumb are individually articulated. Now we turn to what is easily the area that I was the most curious to see how exactly would work, considering that he does have a pretty mighty cockpit slap bang and center. So to begin with, this surprisingly has no issues in crunching forwards pretty much to that far. It can then also crunch backwards as well as side to side, although unfortunately the actual waist articulation is incredibly limited, and I do wish that maybe they could have smacked in an additional hinge joint to that cockpit, or alternatively they maybe could have made the cutout in the skirt just slightly bigger, so at the very least we could have got a little more range when it does come to moving both left to right. But surprisingly the skirt is actually stacked when it does come down to multi-layered hinge joints, meaning that you are able to get those hips moving in any way that you'd like. So to begin with, they have no issues in kicking outwards roughly to that far, and the second that you do make use out of those beautiful drop down hips, he will also have no problems in totally rocking the splits. The thigh can spin all the way around, and the knee can bend way past 90 due to this supreme double joint. And then finally, when it does come down here to the ankle, in addition to crunching inwards that far, it can also begin to rock both forwards and backwards, meaning that surprisingly you are able to get this guy into quite a few fair dynamic poses, despite the design initially coming across as being rather blocky. But as I'm sure you guys all know by now, to see the true power of Starscream, now let's put him through the pose test. Sweeping into some size comparisons, first up we are bringing out the Transformers MP52 Starscream. Now to be honest guys, the second that I did whack this Yolopark version out, I was actually gobsmacked to see just how close he is in design to this actual masterpiece, which was a brilliant release. This guy does have the ability to transform into a full-blown jet, but the biggest downside would be that price point. He did retail for very close to around the $300 mark. Now considering that this Starscream does not need to transform, he does just look better when it comes down to robot mode. He includes diecast, LEDs, and a pretty decent amount of accessories, and does only retail for roughly $50. So to kind of go back to my earlier point, if you are like myself and you don't mind your Transformers not transforming, then this Yolopark Starscream, to be honest, is an absolute no-brainer. And I think the same could be said as we check out the rest of their G1 lineup. Right now, they are killing it, specifically when it does come down to this AMK Pro subline, because here we have their G1 Megatron, and I mean, come on, here is their version version of a G1 Optimus Prime, and he is looking immaculate. Flying through some general mainline comparisons, first up we have the myth, the legend that is the Earthrise Optimus Prime, the Transformers Studio Series 86 Leader Class Starscream, then finally the brand new Deluxe Class Bumblebee. So, wrapping up on this review for Yolopark's Transformers Generation 1 Starscream. Yet again, as we all expected, another killer entry into their AMK Pro lineup. Much like both Optimus Prime and Megatron, this is quality. This guy looks amazing, near perfection in comparison to the actual character model, which is exactly what you would expect from a full-blown non-transforming Transformer. The articulation is mostly up to par with the exception of the waist. I really do wish that maybe they could have worked around that cockpit, potentially adding an additional hinge so that we could have lifted that bad boy upwards. Now, if non-transforming Transformers are your thing, then definitely make sure to check out the links down below. I would love to get your guys' thoughts on this Starscream down in the comment section below. What do you guys think? I want to thank you all so much for watching, and until my next video, transform and roll out!